People often ask me what is the best tasting muscadine. And of course that's subjective, but one of the ones I really like is Southland. It makes a small berry, very soft, kind of slimy pulp, very thick skin. It's more like a wild traditional muscadine. This came out of Mississippi breeding program. That breeding program was a little bit different than most of the others. They used different germplasm. They're very distinct from the University of Georgia and North Carolina ones. Very dry scar. It's a self-fertile. It's a healthy vine. But if you just smell it, you'll get that really strong, that nice muscadine aroma. And I really like it for that reason.
Dean Family Acres. All right guys, so we're here at Tifton, Georgia. This is the absolute best event you can come to in the country if you were looking for information about muscadines.
All right, let's move over to the black ones next.
Last week we highlighted 13 bronze varieties, and this week we'll highlight 16 black and red varieties. Lots of these varieties are released, but some of them you can't find anywhere. So stay tuned and let us know what you think would be your favorite.
If you are going to plant just a few vines at home, I always recommend people to plant the black types over the bronze types, unless you just absolutely like the flavor better of the bronze. And I do think the black and bronze have a slightly different flavor from each other. But the black types get much less soft rots than do the bronze types. I grow some of the black ones at home. I don't spray them at all, and we do okay with them if the raccoons leave us alone. So if you just want a few vines and you don't want to spray and you don't care about the color, definitely choose black varieties for your home vineyard. This is Supreme. I recommend anybody that's got space for it to plant Supreme. I really like this variety. It's by far the #1 fresh market muscadine out there, and it's for good reason. It's got a nice big fruit. It's got a firm flesh. It holds well, both in storage and on the vine. So Supreme, you can let it get dark. These are ready to pick now. You can come back a week or two later and they'll still be on there, just getting sweeter. Not all varieties hold on the vine that well. Supreme's very good about it. The only people that have really had much trouble with Supreme is if you get in north areas and you get a heavy crop load, you can get freeze damage on Supreme. One of the most important things for freeze damage is not to overstress the vines. If you put a huge crop on there and you don't pick them especially, the vines will go into the winter being low in vigor, and you're at least twice as likely to get freeze damage on those vines than on appropriately cropped variety. How do you tell if your vine is overcropped? Basically you look, and if you're seeing a lot of berries on your vine, it's probably overcropped. This vine has a good crop on it, but you're not seeing them. You got a nice leaf canopy, the berries are hidden under there, you got enough leaves feeding the berries. Compare that to Ruby Chris next door, where this vine is struggling, and you're seeing the crop on here, and you're not seeing enough leaves. So here, what might be an appropriate crop, here you don't have enough foliage for the crop. What's happening in these varieties, and Ruby Crisp is one that does it, is we bred a large self-fertile. So remember I said the cluster size was bigger on the self-fertile. They set more crop. And the problem we get into is the first self-fertile vines had maybe 5-6 gram berry, and that was fine. The vine could handle that. We kept crossing them. We got up to 10 and 11 grams. That's about where Hall is. That's a lot of crop on it, but it could handle it. The Ruby Crisp, we bred it, and it went up to like 15 grams. Same amount of berries, that's again a third bigger, and it just gets to be too much crop on the vine. So the vine breaks bud in the spring, It'll set 2 or 3 clusters. It's self-fertile, so it's setting every berry on those clusters. And it gets to be too many berries per cluster, and the vine vigor goes down. So it's less sugar in the roots to support next year's growth. It'll come out, it'll break these same buds, and it'll make those same clusters, the same cluster size, but it doesn't have enough vigor to extend the shoot to give enough leaves to feed that cluster. And so you get the same amount of berries, shorter shoot, and again, there's less going into the winter time. And it'll just keep doing that cycle, and eventually it's just starving the vine, and you can have the vine collapse, and you can even have it die from overfruiting.
So reduce crop every year.
It's especially important to reduce the crop the first few years. Because once you get it up and down the wire, it's going to start to bloom, but the root system's really not all that well established.
Okay.
And so it's going to want to set in year 2 and especially year 3 and 4 a big crop when the vine's not quite ready for it.
So just keep it about half back.
So take some of this crop in. Just come in. The ways I've done, you can either, just knock them off like that. And trust me, it'll look like a ton of fruit on there. You'll come back in 2 weeks, there's still enough fruit.
Okay.
What's the age of that vine? 3 years?
That vine is probably 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Shane, put an asterisk on that
good the
if
first
the deer
2
don't get
years,
the ones you left.
And it just, we didn't get time to thin the crop, and it's just started going down. Once you've got them to this stage where they're struggling, it takes me about 2 to 3 years taking all the crop off to get that vine to recover. And some of them never really seem to. So it's very important to get some of this crop load off so you have enough fully established. I mean, a muscadine produces a lot of fruit, probably more than you're going to eat anyway. So take some of it off, get the quality up, and keep your vine. Another way to get the fruit off is take a plastic baseball bat and just kind of come along and just smack it. And it's sort of self-limiting because if you have a lot of canopy, you can't hit the fruit hardly enough to knock them off. But where there's not enough canopy, it's easy to hit them and knock them off. So that's another way to just get the berries off. And try to take them off once the berries size, but before they get much sugar in them, somewhere around Verizon when they start to change color. This one is Majesty, which was a Florida A&M release. And it's Supreme by Triumph. The variety you can buy, it's probably one of the very largest you can buy. It's very good flavor to me. Generally, this vine's got a decent crop on it. We've struggled to get full crops on Majesty. I think it'd be a good home vine, but I'd rather have Supreme commercially because you're going to get more yield off of Supreme.
Funny as big as yours, Paul.
What?
I ate one at Paul's yesterday, one of his Majesty. And
yeah, they can be
oh
huge.
Man, I couldn't close my mouth. It was so big. It was crazy. All right, guys, so you see Majesty. You heard Dr. Connor speak about it. These are absolute whoppers. Just absolutely insane as how big they are. Mouthful. Mmm. 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 So good. Mmm. I just can't explain. Majesty's so good. Now, we mentioned that these are not super productive, but when you've got plum size fruit, absolutely crazy.
This variety is Paulk. We released it to be something similar to Supreme, but have self-fertile flowers. It's not, when you if you grade out 100 berries, it'll be very similar on average to Supreme. What happens is Supreme If it gets fully pollinated and gets 3 or 4 seeds in it, it gets a bigger berry than Paulk. But if you only get 1 or no seeds, then you get a small berry. And so it's more of a mixture. Paulk, because it's self-fertile, always has 3 to 4 seeds. Very consistent berry size. It'll be around 15 grams. It's very nice in the clamshell. It's big enough to give that good look. The biggest difference between Paulk in terms of looks, Supreme doesn't have the little spots, the little lenticels on the fruit. Supreme doesn't have the ones that Paulk does. That's the only way to really tell them apart. If you get them side by side, they're pretty similar to each other. It picks better than Supreme. It usually has a drier stem scar. It tends to be a little more consistent on the vine when it ripens, so you can get 1 or 2 pickings and get them all picked. The one thing we've noticed, Paulk, after we got it out, it does not hang on the vine the way Supreme does. Supreme, you can just let it keep getting riper and riper and riper. Paulk, when it's ripe, needs to be picked. You're going to have about a week to a week and a half to get it picked. That's kind of good for the commercial growers because they can get in there and just go through and do a once-over picking a lot of times, then get all the crop off and put it into storage. But if you're pick your own or home, you probably would be better off with Supreme because it'll last longer on the vine.
Where does Ison fall in that mix?
Ison is next door. Ison is not the size that a Supreme or a Paulk would be.
Okay.
So Ison's going to be more around 10 grams, 9 grams.
Does it do hanging on the vine?
To me, it does all right. Yeah,
Okay.
Ison is a good all-purpose vine. A lot of people like it. A lot of home people like it. It's mid to late season. It's usually pretty vigorous, usually pretty productive, and just a pretty good all-around berry. The two that seem to do real well, and it'd be big enough for clamshells probably, are Delicious and Ison are 2 all-around good, productive black varieties. They just don't have, they're not of the size class that the Supreme and Majesty Paulk is. They're more of a medium-sized berry. This one is Sweet Mix. We just got this vine a little bit ago. This is one that's put out by Ison's, kind of complements Supreme. I'm not sure, I haven't had it long enough to know what exactly the good and bad points are. Seem to have good flavor. This is our first year getting much crop out of it. So we'll be interested to follow this one along. It's also female like Supreme. Black Beauty, in terms of fruit quality, exceptional eating grape, kind of a firmish flesh, a nice skin, but as you can see, a lot of these female varieties, and Black Beauty's one, very seldom do you get what I would consider a good full crop off of it. You just are getting usually 50 to 30% of a crop. This year it looks more like 20%. It's just not got a lot of berries on it. If you want something very good quality, nice to eat for home use, it might be okay, but if you're trying to sell, it's just not going to have enough yield for you. This is Nesbitt. It used to be quite common to find this, and it was sold quite a bit for pick your own and home orchards. Medium-sized berry. It's fried by Coward. Decent flavor, mid to late season. Very strong vine. It would be a good home use one. It doesn't, I think it doesn't root real well, and so a lot of the nurseries don't like to carry it as much anymore. Alachua was released by Florida. It's rare to find it, but it's also a good home variety. This one is Southern Home. It's the only released cultivar which has some bunch grape ancestry, and you can tell that on this one. From the leaves, when you get this maple leaf, cut leaf type, if you see that in a muscadine, you know it's got some bunch grape somewhere in its background. This is a cluster of it. It's fairly medium to small size, purple grape. Pretty good flavor. Tastes pretty much like a muscadine. There's not much bunch grape flavor in it. If you want a home vine, it's a little more ornamental than a standard muscadine. It's a nice choice. It would look pretty good on an arbor or trellis, something like that. where you're seeing the leaves more. We've been using it somewhat in breeding, trying to bring that trait in. Commercial growers don't care what the leaf looks like, but homeowners, we'd like to have one that has a little bit bigger berry, nicer berry for use in that, because to me it is a much more attractive leaf shape. People often ask me what is the best tasting muscadine, and of course that's subjective, but one of the ones I really like is Southland. It makes a small berry, very soft, kind of slimy pulp, very thick skin. It's more like a wild traditional muscadine. This came out of Mississippi breeding program. That breeding program was a little bit different than most of the others. They used different germplasm. They're very distinct from the University of Georgia and North Carolina ones. Very dry scar. It's a self-fertile. It's a healthy vine. But if you just smell it, you'll get that really strong, that nice muscadine aroma. And I really like it for that reason. We've been using it a little bit to try and bring in that dry scar, but mostly to try and get that aroma into some bigger fruited varieties. So that one, and then Magoon is next door. That's another one that was released from that same program. It also has that very strong aroma. These are kind of late season varieties, but if you come in here when they're getting fully ripe on the vine, you can just smell it from coming across from the vine. So it's a really good one for that.
All right, guys, so we're gonna try a Magoon. Not very big, but again, just a unique variety. Very tough skin. Smaller berry. Pretty decent flavor. All right, here's Southland. Interesting.
This is Florida Onyx. It was a recent release by Florida A&M University. It's got Supreme in its background. It's a large purple variety. It's fairly new here, so we're still deciding how much the productivity and quality is. But flavor's pretty good. It's a little soft maybe, but not a bad variety. So if you see that out, that's what it is.
Do you know of any place selling it yet?
I do not. Typically their releases have been a little harder to find. I don't know if they're selling it around Tallahassee, like in Just Fruits and Exotics. You might try that. I've not seen it in like Isons or Bottoms yet. All right, let's walk through the selections and then we'll go back and look at some of the new ones on the table.
Don't hear many people talk about Polyanna, but we're gonna try it today. Good. I wouldn't put it top on my list, but it's just small, kind of seedy. It does have a little bit more of a bite to it, but I wouldn't put it on my list. Have not heard of this one before. Regale. I think I'll pass on that. I've heard a lot of people talk about jumbo. Honestly, out of those last couple, I would pick jumbo. Still, it's not very large. Lake Charles, I remember this from last time. Lake Charles is very good. I wish I could tell you about all the varieties out here. This is absolutely incredible. Just the time that they've taken to be able to be out here and have this and allow us to have time to taste. Just the number of varieties is unreal as we kind of make our way through here. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. This was an excellent event. I'd encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to try and come to a meetup of some form or fashion, no matter what your fruit preference might be. I would encourage you strongly, go check it out. Right over here, you're gonna have a playlist pop up in regards to other videos from here in Tifton. Over here, you're gonna have a playlist pop up for muscadines in general from our channel. Thanks so much, guys. Hope you have a blessed one.